Hello again guys. As I mentioned in the last video, we'll be looking at some more chords today. If you haven't seen that one, I'd recommend going back and watching it, as I explained some things at the start of that video that I'm going to miss out now to save a bit of time. With that said, I'm going to switch straight to the neck view and we'll dive in looking at some more chords. The first chord in today's video is E major, and it sounds like this. To play it, leave the E string open to ring out. Place your second finger on the second fret of the A string, the note B. Place your third finger on the second fret of the D string, the note E. Place your first finger on the first fret of the G string, which is the note G sharp, and then leave the two highest strings open to complete the E chord. Pick each string individually to make sure each note rings out. You may have noticed that the chord shape for an E is the same as the chord shape for an A minor, just moved down, as in towards the lower strings. This is another example of something you can use to make switching between two chords, in this case E and A minor, a bit easier. Keep your fingers in the same shape and just jump them up or down a string to change the chord. The next chord is E minor. One way of playing this chord would be to get your E major chord into position and then lift off your first finger so that the open G can ring out. Alternatively, use your first finger on the second fret of the A string and your second finger on the second fret of the D string. I'd say which fingering you decide to use depends on preference, as well as whatever chord you may be coming or going from to get to the E minor chord. Make sure to experiment by switching between all of the different chords you know. Moving on, we'll look at F major next. People tend to struggle with this chord quite a lot, so I feel it's important to introduce it early on in order to maximise the amount of time you have to work on it. I'm going to show you an easier way to play it first, so that you can still make use of this chord if you're struggling with the full version, and that sounds like this. For this version, you might have noticed we're missing or muting out the low E and A strings. On the D string, place your third finger on the third fret, which is the note F. On the G string, second finger on the second fret for the note A. And finally, on the B and E strings, bar your first finger across the first fret of both the strings to add the notes C and another F. Remember to play each string individually to make sure you can sound all the notes correctly. The full F chord is quite similar to what we have here already. We're just adding notes onto the low E and A strings, which means we have to rearrange our fingers slightly. This version of an F chord is a 6-string bar chord because it requires us to bar our first finger across all 6 strings at the first fret. Next, place your third finger on the third fret of the A string for the note C, your fourth finger on the third fret of the D string for the F again, and finally place your second finger back onto the A note of the second fret on the G string. This makes the F major 6-string bar chord. It's similar to the simpler version I showed you just before, but we've added an F note on the low E string and a C note on the A string. Bar chords are a very useful tool for guitarists, as all the shapes are movable, meaning that if we take this F shape and move it up a couple of frets, it becomes a G major. A couple more, and it becomes A major. We'll look at bar chords in more detail in another video, but for now, focus on making sure you can play one of the two F chords, and you can get each note to ring out individually when you have the chord shape in place. Last time we looked at the D major chord, and this time we're going to look at D minor. It's quite similar to D major, but we have to rearrange our fingers to get all the correct notes. To play it, like D major, leave out or mute the low E and A strings. Leave the D string open to ring out. Place your second finger on the second fret of the G string, the note A. Again, place your third finger on the third fret of the B string for the note D, and finish off the chord by placing your first finger on the first fret of the high E string, the note F. This is D minor. The last chord we're going to look at in this video is B minor. Similar to the F chord, I'm going to show you two different ways of playing it, with one of them being a bar chord, although I'll start with the easier version that sounds like this. To play this chord, start out by missing out or muting the low E and A strings, and leave the D string open to ring out. On the G string, place your third finger on the fourth fret, which is the note B. Place your second finger on the third fret of the B string, which is the note D. Finally, place your first finger on the second fret of the high E string on the F sharp to complete the B minor chord. In order to go from this version of the B minor chord to the bar chord version, we're going to have to rearrange our fingers yet again to add more notes to the chord. Start off by missing or muting the low E string. From here, bar your first finger across the second fret on the remaining 5 strings. Place your third finger on the fourth fret of the D string for the note F sharp. Use your fourth finger this time on the fourth fret of the G string to play the note B. Then place your second finger back on the third fret of the B string for the note D again. Your bar should include the F sharp note on the high E string. Pick each string to make sure you can hear each note ring out. This version of a B minor chord is a 5-string bar chord, as it includes a bar across 5 strings. Again, like the 6-string bar chord, it's movable, and if you move it down 2 frets, 1, 2, you'll notice that you have your A minor shape. The song we're going to look at today is another classic, Hotel California by the Eagles. I explained that the F bar chord I showed you is movable, and for this song we're going to make use of that, as it includes the chord F sharp. It's also possible to use the simplified version of the chord and move it up. To go from F to F sharp, we simply take our shape and move it up 1 fret. This song also uses a couple of the chords we looked at in last video, so make sure you're happy with those before attempting this. We're going to stick to hitting the chords once per beat for this brief overview, but next lesson I'll be introducing some of the basics of rhythm in music, and you'll have some other strumming patterns you can bring back and apply. Let's get straight into the verse. The first chord of this song is B minor, which you'll play 4 times, either using the simplified version or the full bar chord version that I'm using there. Next is F sharp 4 times. Remember that it's just one of the 2 F variations I showed you, but moved up 1 fret. The next chord is A 4 times. And then it's E 4 times. You might have noticed that we'll be playing each chord 4 times, and this is a pattern that continues for the rest of the verse. After E, the next chord is G 4 times. Next is D. And it's E minor for 4. And finally F sharp again for 4. This makes up the first half of the verses to this song. The second half of the verses is just what I've shown you, but repeated. Altogether, it sounds like this. For the choruses, again we stick to a pattern of playing each chord 4 times. The chords are G, D, F sharp 7, but for now you can just play F sharp, B minor, G, D, E minor, and finally F sharp again. All together, that sounds like this. This is the basic framework for the whole song. Once you're comfortable with playing these chords, try and play it along with the record. Similar to last time, the chords are being played in a way to make it sound a bit more interesting, but for now, we're just worried about being able to change chords and make something that sounds like music. That covers a handful of basic chords that should give you a fighting chance at playing most songs written in common keys. Most guitar chord websites will provide you with chord diagrams for any chords that you haven't learned yet or that you need a reminder on. Next time, as I've mentioned, we'll look at the basics of rhythm, both from a playing and a music theory standpoint. Please go down to the comments and leave some feedback, or head over to my Facebook page, which is linked in the description, and do so there. Till next time.